Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's got everything outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up top.
Oh my God. Big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go.
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my God!
God, what?
Yeah, so we're using the VRS Direct Force Pro this year. We have a wheel adapter right here, so I'm using the rim I used last year. But the motor right here produces a lot of power, a lot of precision, and it helps me, just feel the car more, feel the car a lot quicker. Especially, this week we're at Sonoma. I can feel it, when it hits the curbs. Any little change in the car, the wheel reacts a lot quicker than your typical gear-driven or belt-driven wheel. For example, if you're on oval and the rear tires break loose, force feedback on it corrects a lot quicker than your typical wheels. There's no resistance pretty much as far as being able to make quick corrections on the wheel. So all that, paired with how precise the wheel itself is, it makes it to where it helps you as a driver, to find that extra hundredth or thousandths of a second. So when you're getting a direct drive wheel, especially the VRS wheel, it's heavy duty. It's got good weight to it, it's not a plastic toy. Feels like you can really beat up on it. A lot of people have issues with their plastic gear-driven wheels just kind of breaking after a couple years. This thing just feels like it can go forever. The forces are really strong where if you might have to let go of the wheel if you get into the wall. You can adjust all that with the settings on it and stuff, but the wheel itself doesn't play around. It's got way more strength than you could ever need, and that's what makes it good, that you can adjust that down to whatever the car needs. So initially you'll be able to get the controller box and the motor together, and eventually you will be able to add a rim onto that option. They'll also be including a button plate on it to put on the rim to have all sorts of different buttons and functionality. Also, pedals are coming, so that's a pretty big deal as well. Hasn't been covered too much, but the goal is to also have pedals to go along with the Direct Force Pro. So that's pretty exciting. The wheel feels good. It feels very much like a real world steering wheel. You just kind of feel like what you would imagine the car to feel like. A real steering wheel in a car is very smooth, it's very direct, very quick, and that's what this wheel feels like.
Hello and welcome to the V8 Supercars America Series. I'm Ken Kraft. JD's taking the night off, had some stuff he needed to do tonight. So with me tonight is Jake Kennedy. Tonight we're at the Red Bull Ring, round 8 of the V8 Supercars America Series. The series is going pretty good so far. It's been pretty exciting each and every week. Guys getting out onto the field for qualifying here at the Red Bull Ring. And as that progresses, we can let you know a little bit more about how those guys are qualifying. Tonight, you can expect to see the track here on your screen. Sorry guys, my screen just a little blurry for me. I couldn't read what was on the screen there, but oh, Jake can see it good. He'll pop in and let.
Fix my mic up and then I can actually talk properly to everyone. Yeah, first time in this series at the Red Bull Ring. We've seen a little bit of racing here over the last couple of weeks here on SimSpeed, but a really cool track, very, very fast and flowing through the hills, lots of elevation, as you know, from the run up to turn 3 up the hill. But it does have a little bit of a characteristic where the drivers have to be a little bit careful to not run off the tracks and exceed track limits. The chance of getting drive-through penalties is very, very high for the drivers in this.
Yeah, I've heard that penalties is definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye out for tonight. Penalties being penalty count being pretty high tonight could result in some drive-through penalties. Probably not disqualifications, but definitely possibility of some drive-through penalties.
100%. We're very, very likely to see a penalty, at least one, that is, maybe even more, but we'll hopefully not see too many drivers succumb to that, as qualifying is underway, as you said. Incident limit is 17, means that you can run off the circuit, exceed the track limit 17 times throughout the race before you get a penalty. That penalty is a drive-through penalty. Over 30 laps, it doesn't leave much, because you can see right there, Corey Shepherd running very, very wide. That's okay, but this corner here, you can't run too wide. He's just kept it within the track limits there, potentially. But any wider than that, that's one of those penalty points. The other key spot is here at the exit of turn 1. And if you put all 4 wheels outside that yellow sausage curve, the sleeping policeman, you will find yourself getting a 1x penalty as well there too. So very, very easy to rack up those penalty points. 17 sounds like a lot. Cut it back to 17 over 30 laps. It's one every second lap essentially. But with how easy they are to get, you can find yourself racking up 3 or 4 very, very quickly.
Well, so far it looks like Corey Shepherd is holding on to that #1 spot. Looks like Dylan Rudd is into that second spot so far. They've only got about half their qualifying session done, so these could definitely change. They only get a few good runs at it though, so usually once they post a good lap, that they're only going to get another chance or 2 at it.
We saw Corey Shepherd there. As soon as he finished his lap, he went around turn 1, realised he wasn't going to go any quicker and pulled it off the circuit. So yeah, probably the first lap is your primary lap, and if you don't get a real good one in on that first lap, you may not improve on the second one. Tony Klusterman is on his second lap, as you can see. His best lap is a 31.4, around about 1.4 seconds off where we would expect him to be, up towards the pointy end of the field. So hopefully his second lap is a little bit better. It is just, but it will gain him a few spots. He's up in the 10th. 4 spots from just on a 10th of a second.
That puts him right about his finishing position yesterday. I didn't watch yesterday, so I don't know if he had any incidents or anything. I do know he finished in the 10th spot yesterday, so his lap time puts him right around that 10th spot. So maybe that's just where his pace was yesterday. I know this is a newer track for guys here in the Supercar, so not a whole lot of experience here at this track for these guys.
Yeah, because the newest track to iRacing here, the Red Bull Ring, released now 8 weeks ago, and first run at it in the iRacing V8. But a few other series have been here already. We've seen the iRacing Grand Prix series here. We've seen Aussie Car here last week in the Formula V, and also in the Skip Barbers. That was good fun. We've had TCR action here and X5 action here. But these things around this track, a little bit of a more daunting sounding combination, isn't it? The high power of these cars, the heavy weight of these cars, doesn't sound like an easy proposition.
No, and just what I see on the track right there, just the hills. Whenever you crest these hills so fast, the weight shifts so dramatically on these things that it can really throw. As we've seen a couple weeks ago, when those guys would come over one of those hills on a turn, they would lose the rear end almost every time. So I expect we'll probably see some similar things on some of these turns that I see here on this track.
Exactly right. That run up the hill up towards turn 3 is going to be very, very interesting on that first lap especially. Everyone has done their 2 laps in qualifying. The only driver that did not get a lap time in is Robbie Bradbury. We'll quickly run through the grid and talk a little bit of strategy. Shepherd and Rudd on the front row. I believe that's the same as last week as well. We saw those 2 at the front. Netsov and Latta on row 2. Brian Borg and Sebastian Tixier in 5th and 6th. Those guys we've seen each and every race this season as well, and have been very, very quick. I've seen them as regulars anyway. Tixier did very, very well last week. We have Sean McNamara and Kevin Savoy In P8, Kyle Stokes and Hayden Harrison, 9th and 10th. Tony Klusterman and James Chastanoff, two names that are very, very familiar to this series. They're a little bit further back than we have seen them in other races, especially think back to the likes of Montreal, where they were a lot further up. Klusterman, as we saw, 1.3 seconds off, and Chastanoff 1.4 seconds off. They'll both be a little bit disappointed with that qualifying. Logan Barnett in 13th with Daniel Misdale, another regular, alongside Raymond 2, another regular. He'll start in 15th, and Jared Bailey, Nathan Moore, Tyson McAvoy. The last group of cars here is Vincent Skilbeck, Robert Crisdale, Paul Young, Roy Clark, Stephen Martin, Andrew Ritchie, and then, as we said, Robbie Bradbury, the only driver to get to not put a time in, and Miro Hertzky is also the other driver that at the back of the field, the last qualifier. But strategy, as we said, 30 laps. Very, very wide pit window.
Another one with a really big pit window. I expect we'll probably see most cars split it down the middle about the 15th lap or so. But I've been really surprised at how varied the pit strategy has been with these guys.
It's quite good that there is a wide window, but the downfall to that is most guys, because of how severe the tyre wear is early in a stint, have just decided to split it pretty close to down the middle. So we'll probably see everyone pit between lap 13 and 17. But you can make it home if you do pit as early as lap 9. So we may see someone that's stuck in traffic or a little bit out of position. If someone has an incident on lap 1 and is struggling to pass cars, might start that pit strategy at that point. But we're likely to see most drivers come in around about lap 13, 14, 15 through to maybe lap 18 at the latest. Unlikely to see anyone stretch it out to 21, although strange things happen in this series. We've seen all different sorts of strategies actually work. So see what happens over the next 30 laps.
Several drivers regular to this series starting well down in the field, much further than where they want to be or where they normally are. So we're going to be seeing some great battles all throughout this field.
One driver left to jump on to the grid, and they are on. So here we go. Revs rising, and round number 8 is underway.
Wow, 3 wide right off the get-go.
I was saying, Kevin Savoy got a horrible, horrible launch, but Dylan Rudd has been the one to get the whole shot, and he is away at the front, ahead of Corey Shepherd, who I would have suspected would have run away with it. You see the teammates side by side there, that being Tixier and Borg. We've got Sean McNamara in behind, but...
Oh, some contact there with Borg. Wow, he held on to it.
Very deep under brakes. Oh, that's Tixier around. A little bit of contact, not caused by his teammate. Was contact with his teammate, but not necessarily caused by him. And another car off in the wall there. That's Logan Barnett. We've seen have some very, very good runs in this car lately. Still a bit of side-by-side. Daniel Misdale's also been caught up in something else, and that's a huge incident for him. He's got huge damage.
Yeah, that
to
was
his
the
car.
most damage. Yeah, that was the most damage to all the cars that we've seen in that mess. It looks like Daniel Misdale caught the absolute worst of it.
Also out of the race as well. To come up to complete lap 1, the battle for the lead is well and truly on.
Yeah, it is. Corey Shepherd doing everything he can to try to get around Dylan Rudd there. Dylan Rudd holding on, but only just barely. If anyone was going to compete with Corey Shepherd, I think it would be Dylan Rudd. His times in the qualifying was so close, but we've seen Corey Shepherd time after time just really dominate here in this series. So here he goes down to the inside, going to get that inside move done on Dylan Shepherd, and that is going to put Corey Shepherd out in front. We'll see if Dylan Rudd can hold on to Corey Shepherd, because usually when Corey Shepherd gets out in front like that, boy, he takes off.
100%. He's been very, very strong in running away in these races. Rick Kuznetsov couldn't quite get past Kenneth Latta, and now they're still battling away, and that's Brian Borgen behind. Sean McNamara not far away. Biggest mover at the moment is Paul Young in the number 19 car. He's already up 8 positions from where he started. Started in 21st, already up into 13th in that number 19 car. Netsov still trying to get this move done though. Quite close enough to get a potential move done there into turn 1 is Kuznetsov. A little bit wide over that sausage curve. That's okay at that point. You don't want to go any further than that though. Brian Borgen behind. Guys continue their single file run. Interesting what I did notice there. Coming out of turn 7, Kuznetsov does get the run this time. And nice little switchback attempt from Kenneth Latta, and might continue it. Kuznetsov couldn't get the move done into turn 8, so what he did, he got on the clutch very, very early and started to save a bunch of fuel. We'll see that from guys that maybe can't get the move done. Better to back out of it and save fuel, but Kenneth Latta isn't backing out. He wants that spot back.
A side by side, I'm not sure he's got it done. The other guy's got that inside turn. Who is that he's battling with there? Is that Kuznetsov?
That is Kuznetsov, so it's a battle for 3rd and 4th. We've got Brian Borg not far away as well, actually able to close right in on this battle. Of course, Kuznetsov and Borg teammates, along with Corey Shepard and Sebastian Tixier, so the Premier Racing team with 4 drivers out there in this race at the moment. And how's that for a switchback from Kuznetsov in the purple and white car? Going to force Kenneth Latta to go wide. They're both going to be compromised. And Borg may have the run, may send this 3 wide here.
He's pushing it right up in there.
The Commodore of Sean McNamara not far from getting on the back of these guys as well to potentially get involved in this fight. So we've got a true 4-car battle now for the final podium spot as Rudd and Shepard have started to check out at the front. 2x2 up the hill. Teammates are probably going to try and work together and box Kenneth Latta in the DPR Alco Holder car out. But Latta drops back behind Brian Borg here. Kenneth Latta's he's a fairly smart and aggressive driver. He's not going to let these guys push him around too much.
He's definitely putting on a battle here. Kuznetsov able to regain that position and pull away a little bit.
A little bit of a compromised run from Kenneth Latta, and yet just that tiny little bit of a gap. You can see Kyle Stokes in the Synergy Sim Racing JK Signs car, not far away as well. Kyle back out there on track in this series. Haven't seen him for a little while. Behind these guys as well, you can see there's a little battle forming between these 2 cars here. This is Hayden Harrison, the Taipan Esports car, and just ahead of him, James Chastanoff in the EMU Racing car. Chastanoff already up 4 positions, started in 12th, up into 8th.
Nice job, Chastanoff. Just one of those drivers that just don't seem to get a break. It seems like every single race he is just in a serious battle for almost the entire race.
Battle back in the field a little bit here. This is 16th, 17th and 18th. Tony Klusterman, who by his standards is not having a great run at this track. He's getting used to some new equipment though, so maybe he might be just still getting used to that new equipment. There's Steve Martin in the KFC car around the outside, just behind Tixier, who we saw have those issues early on his recovery drive.
Not a bad recovery at all. Doing pretty good. A person just should not underestimate the difficulties of getting new equipment. Just a different steering wheel or pedals can make a huge difference in your performance. And you could be absolutely right on Tony Klusterman. And just might take him a week or two to get used to the new equipment.
It's very, very wide through into the final corner. Is okay around this track and use a lot of the circuit. Of course, this track and Spa using iRacing's new 4-wheel detection system for off-track. So rather than a mathematical 50% of a car being outside the track limits, it now detects all 4 wheels being off the circuit or off the racing surface, which is what people within iRacing have been crying out for a long, long time. That'll be adjusted around all different tracks over the coming months and years to add all the tracks up to that standard. Thanks here, just gives Stephen Martin a little bit of a bump out of the way and continues on by. While we were watching that, Hayden Harrison got past James Chastain and one performance racing car of Tyson McAvoy and Nathan Moore as well. They're all in on this fight now too, as Tyson McAvoy is up 8 positions. He is also one of the biggest movers in the field.
Back up to that battle that we was watching earlier with Kutsanov. He has managed to pull away several car lengths ahead of Kenneth Latter. Kenneth Latter, Brian Borg, a little gap forming between those two as well, and Sean McNamara right there. But the guys have kind of settled down, starting to take it a little easy, and I think they're probably running quicker lap times since they're not battling. Maybe they'll be able to reel in those guys that are starting to pull away, Dylan Rudd and Corey Shepard out in front.
Yeah, well, last lap, Kuznetsov was a 10th quicker than Dylan Rudd. But while they were battling, that side-by-side really hurt them because it dropped them around about 3 seconds. You can see there the shot of how far back they are. It's 3.3 seconds Kuznetsov up to Dylan Rudd. And Rudd's lost around about 2 seconds to Corey Shepard already. So Shepard, as you said before, in a world of his own. But the rest of the field, the rest of the battle is definitely on. I think that the likes of Sean McNamara are in a very, very good spot here. He doesn't look like he's driving the car too aggressively in that 22. He's quite content just being behind. What he could be doing is saving lots and lots of fuel, which may mean that he will be able to close up a lot of that time in the pit stop. Maybe take less fuel, maybe pit on a totally different strategy and gain some spots.
Dylan Rudd able to hold on to Corey Shepard within 2.5 seconds. I mean, it's still early lap, so it's hard to say how well that's going to hold out in the long run. But so far, that's pretty good compared to past races.
The downfall for Rudd is, though, he's losing ground to that group behind. That group behind, not just Kuznetsov, but the whole group is starting to close up. Last lap by Kuznetsov, 0.3 of a second faster. And around about the same pace as Latter, Borg, and Stokes in that secondary group. Those guys are all faster than every single other car, as James Chastanov's just lost another spot there. Tyson McAvoy through. So Chastanov, after the great start, being up 4 spots, he's now only up 2, and he may lose another one here to Nathan Moore, yet another of the Premier Racing Team cars. Realise that that's another one. No! Oh, hold on. And he does. Just.
Yeah, he did hold on, but only just. Boy, that was close. Good save though. I mean, he's still in the race. That could have been disastrous. He almost, hurt the race for him and for Chastanoff, but he locked it down and he's able to continue on.
When Dylan Rudd crosses the line here, he's now at about a 3-second deficit to Corey Shepard. I just want to try and see if we can get up on screen a bit of a comparison between Rudd and Kuznetsov in regards to lap times. See if this works. So lap 6 it was a tenth slower, lap 7 3/10 slower, and the last lap he was a tenth faster. So very, very similar for pace, those guys. The pit stops may be where that ground is going back between those two, as Chastano has a very, very good run out of turn 1, up the hill. He might be able to get this spot back on Tyson Mcavoy. Mcavoy defends though. Tough braking zone there through turn 4, downhill, very, very easily run it a little bit too deep with the downhill braking zone. Elevation at this track is incredible. It's so amazing how much elevation there is at this track. From this point on here through turn 5, you're downhill the whole way to the start finish line. When I was doing the cool little track maps, it worked out how much elevation change there is through different segments. There's 70 metres of elevation from the base at turn 1 to the apex at turn 3. It's huge how much that is. It's around about 230 odd feet to use your language. Wow.
Got Nathan Moore into the pit stop here on lap 10, so yeah, we are in that pit window.
Tixier looking to get moved on Tony Klusterman. That will be moved on, I would guess. Of course, Klusterman a little bit wide, but not too wide. And just ahead of them is Roy Clark in the Progression Racing Australia car. Going to try and hold on to that 14th position. They're still side by side though, Tixier and Klusterman, both drivers that you should expect to see. We're in about 10 positions up from where they are at the moment. That's moved on from Tixier. But seeing position 15 and 16, you would think that they're on a different strategy or already pitted. But the fact that that's their actual positions in this race shows how bad a run these guys have had to start this night off.
Yeah, that first lap, I think, cost a lot of people's, a lot of positions. I think, well, it was good for some gained, up to 8 positions off that first lap, but some others got held up a little bit and took them back. But then as well, we're seeing that this track is just tough for some of these drivers. I think maybe Tixier and Klusterman might just be 2 drivers that are struggling a little bit here.
Yeah, of course, Tixier was involved in that incident lap 1, which of course Logan Barnett, Raymond 2 and Daniel Misdale all end up retiring from as well. Raymond 2 retiring from the contact in the secondary part of the incident with Daniel Misdale, and Tixier ended up hitting his teammate Brian Borg, who got a little tap from behind. As that's moved on for Tixier, and Klusterman with a very, very good exit out of the first corner, but not quite close enough to potentially get this move done. Klusterman's just struggling on corner exit. I think that whatever new equipment he's got is just not working with him yet. He's just struggling with that throttle pedal.
Yeah, pedals seem like they're the biggest challenge to get used to new pedals. And especially if you're going from, which I know Klusterman's got decent equipment and has had decent equipment, but whenever I went from cheaper pedals to the higher end pedals, my goodness, it took 2 weeks before I could run a decent lap.
Yeah, pedals definitely are some of the biggest biggest challenges in regards to equipment changes that you'll come across, because you can gain and lose so much time in a pedal. Pedals probably be the number one thing that you'd want to adjust if you do look at or want to look at upgrading your equipment, as we're seeing in the pits comes James Chastanoff. Other thing I hadn't mentioned that I don't know if you've noticed yet is how difficult this pit entry is as well. You've got to be really aggressive with your pit entry, but if you're too aggressive, you'll hit the outside wall. The other part too is pit exit. You can quite easily hit the pit wall as well. So Pit lane here, not as simple as you would think of just driving down a slow lane. It's a relatively slow pit lane with an aggressive entry and an aggressive exit.
Yeah, it looked like another pit lane that the pit speed limit about 35 miles an hour, which is really slow, but the pit lane itself is very challenging. As we watch Chasanoff here on his out lap from pit lane, that's a sharp bend right there.
Yeah, of course, you're on the inside of that very, very sharp turn 1 exit, and Armco Barry is very, very close. He's come out exactly where he was before, behind Nathan Moore in the other of Premier Racing Team cars. Klusterman and Clark continue to fight. Klusterman's just lost a spot again. So Tony Klusterman still struggling. He's lost around about 1.5 seconds on this lap. But I think he had a little bit of a moment there through turn number 4 at the top of the hill. Oh, Stokes now starting to get a little bit more aggressive behind Sean McNamara. I think Stokes can see that Borg and Ladder ahead are starting to pull away. He wants to make sure he's on the back of those guys and not losing ground.
Klusterman now into pit lane.
Probably decided those tyres are not enjoying life too much at the moment.
Roy Clark up into that 14th position, and due to some pit stops and stuff, Roy having a pretty good race. I think he's kind of struggling with the track a little bit, like so many others. This is a really tough track, but we just seen Roy get around Tony Klusterman there for what was the 15th position, now up into 14th. We'll see how things pan out with as all the pit stops cycle through.
Back on board with Kyle Stokes, and you can see how much more aggressive Stokes is through the S at turn 7. See there, that's Sean McNamara potentially either giving up the spot or saying, hey, I'm going to pit this lap. You go through. I think it's a second. Have a look how aggressive you have to
right.
this pit entry. You've got to watch out for the grass on the inside. You can't cut it too sharp, and if you do, you can quite easily hit that tyre bundle. And then the cones are very, very late to come up to pit lane. So you've got to be very, very careful in how you attack that pit entry. Because if you do attack it wrong, you'll find yourself either in the wall or exceeding the speed limit or losing ground because you weren't fast enough.
My normal lap timing software would tell me like pit, if people got pit penalties and stuff like that. And the one I'm using now don't do that. It would be interesting to know if we got any penalties and stuff from this pit lane, because man, that is a challenge.
Doesn't appear though we've got any. Do a 15.5 second pit stop. He's come back out around about 7 seconds ahead of Nathan Moore and James Chastanow. Those two are continuing their little fight that we saw before the pit stops. Remember, Tyson Mcavoy and Hayden Harrison were battling with these guys as well. So depending on how long it takes for McAvoy and Harrison to pit and where the rejoin is, this could still be a 4-car battle between all of these. There's a little bit of a compromised run there from Nathan Moore, now covering off from James Chastanow. Brian Borg in the pits.
Looks like Borg's one of the first of the front runners to make the call to go to pit lane.
Amazing that we're already halfway through this race as well. It's gone by
I
very,
can't
very
believe
quick.
it has, and the racing's been so good.
Well, here we go. Chastanow with a much better run on Nathan Moore, and Moore covers it off. That was a little bit cheeky there from Nathan Moore, because Chastanow actually had to get out of the throttle to make sure that there wasn't contact.
Yeah, he ran across there, and if Chastanow wouldn't have let off, that could have been disastrous.
Pulled out. McNamara coming up the hill. Tixier is also in the pits, as well as Jared Bailey and Vincent Skilbeck. Now, you were talking before about potential penalties. We have one. Vincent Skillbeck has a speeding in pit lane penalty or an unsafe pit entrance. One of the two.
I always know from
14 and 15 second stop. If this is around 54 to 55, we know that that's a penalty. 40 second stop and hold.
Yeah, we know from one of the earlier races this season that those stop hold penalties are serious from speeding or unsafe pit entry.
Dylan Rudd's decided the time is now, and he comes as well as Kuznetsov and Ladder. They're all coming in, so they're going to try and cover off that pit stop from Brian Borg and make sure that they don't get caught out from his early stop and those couple of faster laps that you get on those new tyres.
Yeah, Borg is certainly attacking really hard. He's got those fresh tires, so he's able to drive real hard.
Because Netsov, Ladder coming up the hill. Turn 1. Out comes those two. Brian Borg still behind. I think Kenneth Ladder may have gained a little bit of time there on Kuznetsov. Yeah, he's gained about 1.5 seconds in the pit lane. Kuznetsov definitely was pulling ahead, but that gap is closed in. Hayden Harrison rejoins, and have a look at where he's rejoined. Right into that battle he was with before.
Yeah, that's the same spot.
He was ahead of these guys, actually, wasn't he?
It looks like Chasnoff was finally able to get around. Another car. Who was that? Nathan Moore? Yeah,
Yes.
Nathan Moore.
Corey Shepard comes in to make his pit stop. Going to make sure he hits the marks perfectly. Stops it right in the perfect spot. That's a perfect stop. He should come out with around about a 4-second advantage over Dylan Rudd.
Kuznetsov made some pretty good gains through the pit stops. He's got now just a 2-second gain to Dylan Rudd. I think that was much, much greater before the pit stops. Maybe not much, but definitely, I think it was around 4 seconds, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just over 3.5 seconds. So yeah, closer to 4 than 3. So definitely made some inroads and lost a little bit of ground. Everyone has now made their stop as well. You can see Corey Shepard out. He's got a 5.5 second advantage over Dylan Rudd, who's right there. And then you can see Kuznetsov giving a little bit of a flash of the headlights to Rob Brisdale, who is just a lap down at the moment. So he's dropping back down the field. You can see Ladder and Borg still there. Kyle Stokes and Sean McNamara have rejoined together, but they're both a long way off where they were before. They've both lost ground. Another driver that's lost out as well was Tyson Mcavoy. Remember, he was ahead of James Chastano. You can see the battle here, Chastano, Moore and Harrison. You can see just at the back of the group there is Tyson McAvoy. So that latest stop for Tyson McAvoy is hurting about 4 seconds, because he was clear of Chastano by about 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, it becomes completely amazing how different pit strategies will play out. That's one of my favorite things. This season we've had pit stops every race, and they make such an effect on the race outcome. It's the strategy game that goes into these VA Supercar races is pretty cool. It makes these races that much more intense.
Next week will be very, very intense as well. We head to Imola. It's the start of V8 Scott's endurance season next week, so we may see some extra drivers jumping in and doing a little bit of practice and pit stop practice as well, because endurance races in V8 Scott's definitely bring out the strategy mindset and the gamesmanship that we see in those races. It's going to be very, very cool for that to restart next week here on SimSpeed. It'll be around about this time next Saturday night in America, Sunday afternoon, for those of you watching in Australia and New Zealand.
My favorite time of year, endurance season.
Mine too. Mine too. And Imola's always been a really cool track in these cars. When it was first released, we weren't too sure on it, but ever since the first race we had at that track, it instantly became a classic for these cars and is now a staple of this series in its standing of being an endurance round. It always now finds itself in an endurance round slot. It's because of how fun that track is. So there's a little bit of contact there between Hayden Harrison and Nathan Moore. A little bit of impatience starting to creep in from Hayden Harrison, and you can also see the new tyre advantage that Tyson Mcavoy's got, because he's closing in on the back of these guys as well. I just noticed Corey Shepherd has just set the fastest lap of the race, a 1:30.1.
Yeah, he's really pulling away from Dylan Rudd now, over 7 seconds, while Kuznetsov down to 1.6 seconds. There is a great chance, 12 laps to go, maybe 11, that we will see Kuznetsov and Dylan Rudd having a battle for that second spot.
Definitely 1.4 second difference now, so podium is not over. And even the likes of Latta, Borg and Stokes and McNamara might find themselves thinking, well, podium is still on, because the two guys that don't mind a good hard hustle, being Kuznetsov and Rudd, they might find themselves having a little bit of issues. As speaking of issues, there's been a pass for Nathan Moore, an issue for James Chastanoff, because he's now got to defend from Hayden Harrison. They're 3 wide up to turn 4, and Tyson McAvoy's in this now too. How good's this racing?
This battle back here, contact from Moore and Chastanoff sends Chastanoff into the wall. That was absolutely horrible. The damage to the 2 of the other 3 cars, but Chastanoff, that was a serious impact. I don't see him finishing the race. Let's check out the replay.
And it all started way back here at the run up to turn 3, up the hill. Chastanoff, fairly decent gap from Nathan Moore. Moore absolutely launched a huge dive bomb, missed the apex, a little bit of contact between the 2 of them, then contact between Harrison and Chastanoff. And see there Tyson McAvoy watching, waiting and anticipating. 3 wide. The car of Hayden Harrison again missed the apex. 2 deep as well for Nathan Moore. And a little bit of contact. That's unfortunate for Chastanoff. A little bit of net code involved in that one. This race is sadly going to be done. He'll have the meatball. Black and orange flag will tell him that he can't get back out on the track.
Yeah, it's letting him go. He is
beautiful.
going to get back out on track. They were able to get the car repaired enough to at least make some laps, so he will be able to finish. That is better than I thought.
Region behind Vincent Skilbeck, who unfortunately, as we said, got a penalty in pit lane earlier. Finding himself now back in 19th position. We go back up towards the front because Borg and Latta, their battle is not done. Last lap by Kenneth Latta a little bit faster, but the lap previous, well, the couple of laps previous, I should say, Brian Borg was definitely faster than Kenneth Latta and closing that gap in.
Up ahead of those 2, Dylan Rudd has been able to hold that distance between him and Kuznetsov. That gap has stayed at about 1.8, 1.6 seconds ever since I mentioned it earlier. So Dylan Rudd able to hold that gap for now, back to 3rd position.
Jump on board here with Tyson McAvoy. You can see just ahead Nathan Moore and Hayden Harrison. This is the resumption of that battle that did involve James Chastanoff, but now he is out of the battle.
See, that replay was so revealing because I was wondering how Tyson McAvoy was able to catch up to those guys. He was back quite a ways, but as we've seen from that replay, Moore just kind of sent it into that sharp turn, and luckily it didn't take everybody out then, but it did bunch up that field, I think, which ended up and leading to that incident.
The other thing too, of course, is McAvoy's on 7 lap fresher tyres than Nathan Moore, and he and Hayden Harrison only pitted 1 lap apart, but there was a fairly big gap in pit stop between McAvoy and Moore and Chastanet, because remember, Moore and Chastanet, they pitted early, and McAvoy, the very, very last car in the entire field of pitters. That was a huge lock up for him in the turn 8. Locked that left-hand front, just held on. They crossed the line with 9 to go. This battle for 8 is not done yet.
Now, these guys have been having a great battle. A little intense at times, extra intense at times, but it's been a great battle this whole race.
The reason I say, oh no, is Paul Young and Sebastian Tixier have made contact at the final corner, and Tixier looks like he may be out of the race.
Yeah, that damage looks pretty bad.
Yeah, was having a little bit of trouble getting past this car of Paul Young. Just missed the apex a little bit. Much better line. Oh, wow, that was a very, very heavy hit.
It was. I can understand why Tixier thought, I gotta go, because it looked like he was just going to kind of scoot off out of the way, but man, that whenever it turned, that rear end came over and just sent him. That did not look like it, like it was gonna be so disastrous, but then all of a sudden it just switched.
I think part of that may have been that Paul Young was right on the edge of the track and had about to put a wheel onto the concrete as opposed to onto the asphalt, and that was exacerbated the incident, I guess. We continue on 8 laps to go. This is McAvoy and Moore. Hayden Harrison starting to check out a little. Main reason being he's on fresher tyres over Nathan Moore. So Tyson Mcavoy really wants to get this move done ASAP. If he doesn't, he's going to lose track of Hayden Harrison and may not catch him back up.
And McAvoy does got the fresher tires over Nathan Moore, so he should be able to make short work of him. But all those cars do got some pretty significant damage, and from looking at them, there's no way to know how poorly each man's car is driving.
100% right. You can see that damage to the front right of McAvoy's car. You've got a heap of damage to the left of Nathan Moore's car, and Hayden Harrison's car has been in the wars, but doesn't look as bad. A little bit of damage to the front right, but it doesn't look too bad. The paint job probably makes it look like there's less damage than there really is on Hayden Harrison's car.
Yeah, it's hard to tell where the damage starts or the paint job is just, got some extra cool design flares to it. Kind of a ripping design or something makes it hard to tell.
Battle for third. And second is closing up. Is now back down to 1.2 seconds between these two. So Kuznetsov and Rudd starting to close up that gap quite a lot.
So I'll take just a second to answer a question that we had in the YouTube. Looks like you kind of covered a little bit there, Jay. But the question was about the shifters in the car and what are they allowed to use. iRacing will determine whether the car has to use a sequential shifter or it can use the H pattern shifter. If it tells you that the car is a sequential shifting car, it can be your choice whether you use paddle shifters or if you use a standalone sequential shifter or how you want to do it, but it has to be a sequential shifter. You can't use an H pattern on a sequential shifting car.
That's exactly right. There's a shifter in the car. Custom sequential shifter, and lots of drivers have gone away from using paddle shift in these cars and actually getting custom built sequential shifters just for this car, just to add a little bit of realism. But it also adds a little bit of a comfortability thing as well, because if you're using a sequential shifter, a stick shift sequential, you do get a little bit of different feel of how you're driving the car as well. I've noticed that from driving this with pedals, with paddles and a stick shift, that you do notice the difference in using the sequential stick as opposed to using the paddles. It does feel a little bit different in how you drive the car. You seem to be able to handle the car a little bit more like it's a real car. It's a little bit of a mental thing, I think, as much as anything else.
And it looks much cooler to be driving with the standard sequential shifter as opposed to the paddle shift.
100% agree on that one. It does. It looks and feels a lot cooler. Battle is the opposite of cool. It's quite heated right now. This is for 14th position. Roy Clark got Steve Martin, who's just closed in ever so slightly, lap by lap. The battle for these two has been between 0.3 and half a second over the last probably four and a half laps. So they're definitely closing up, these two, if it continues this way for the next 5 laps.
Roy Clark, a driver that races in this series quite frequently. I think he's been here every week that I can remember. We have seen Stephen Martin before. I do recognize the KFC car that makes me hungry every time I see that thing. And so see a couple of series regulars having a good battle, even if it's at the back of the pack. That's what's so great about this America Series, is you can come in here, and whether you're one of the fast guys running up at the front, or if you're a mid pack, or even at the back of the pack, you can still have a good fun race.
And if you are wondering how to get involved in the V8 Americas, this is the iRacing official service. So all you have to do is join the official series for iRacing at this time slot. So that is 2:15 GMT Saturday. Friday night is 10:15 Eastern Time in America, or 12:15 Saturday, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Join that race, and you'll find yourself in with all these drivers. We had 52 today. It's a really good chance to get yourself an official race during the week if you're in Australia and New Zealand or Australasian region. And for the Americas guys, this is the big point scoring race of the week. So this is your big chance to get yourself out there and try and compete with some of the best that Australia and New Zealand have to offer as well, because it is a time slot that suits both regions quite well. And it's been going now for what, 8-9 years now, this time slot?
I think it's I think at least 8 years. I'll have to check with Mike and see exactly how long, but it's record setting. It's been a long time. And kudos to Mike Budzine. If you see him in the server, just tell him thanks. He's been keeping this thing going for all this time. A lot of times all by himself.
Yep, a lot of people have come and gone in regards to assistance with him, but he's stuck with it the whole way through and done a great job on making sure that the American region has had a time slot to race on the iRacing servers. So it's been great to have that, and well done to Mike for his hard work and keeping this series alive and racing of these cars going in the Americas region.
Well, there's just something
two-car
special
battle is now
about
up
this
to
car.
this 2-car battle, while we've been talking, is now a 3-car battle too, because that car ahead is the car of Paul Young, which we saw have contact with Sebastian Fix here not long ago. This is for position 13.
Yeah, Paul Young's car is a little worse for wear, so these guys probably won't have too much trouble getting by him if they could just get up there. It looks like they'll get up there here, and definitely within the 3 laps to go. And as long as they can get around him clean, it should be all right.
Young may defend this though, because I mean, doesn't want to give up too many spots at this point of the race. So you don't want to give away easy positions. And the fact that Martin and Clark are battling away in their own little fight as well may help Paul Young be able to hold on to the spot as they cross the line for 3 to go. I'm going to cut away from it because, importantly, this battle now is below a second. Because Netsov is within 1 second, right on 1 second, Dylan Rudd. That means Draft up the hill with 2 laps to go. He'll be about half a second back with 1 to go.
Yeah, as you just mentioned it. As he gets just a touch closer, he'll be within that draft range, and he should be able to reel him in pretty good, and just in the nick of time with just 3 laps to go. Now 2.
Here we go, and you saw Steve Martin's close, but not quite close enough to be able to get the move done. Let's watch this close up. As I said, 2 to go now. Watch this gap close up now, up the hill is Netsov. 0.8 of a second. He'll be within half a second, I think, by the time they reach turn 3 up the hill here. Still 0.8. Now it's starting to drop. Look at it go. 0.7.
A little bit of flash from those lights a little bit ago, letting him know, hey, I'm coming.
That broke himself there, though.
He did. He gave him some of that time back, and he's back over a second.
While we were watching that, move done. Roy Clark is past Paul Young. And for Steve Martin couldn't quite get the job done, couldn't quite finish it off. He's tucked in behind. They continue their battle. Across the line with 2 laps to go.
Roy Clark's usually got some fans that enjoy watching him race, so they'll be glad to see him get another position.
Tyson Mcavoy also
Gets
just
that
in the
camera
position.
time.
Mcavoy up into 9th now over Nathan Morse. That move done in the hairpin. Corey Shepard crosses the line to start the final lap of the race. A little bit of traffic, but he's got no issues from behind at this stage. Clark also with no issues from behind because Steve Martin has not been able to get past Paul Young. Going to have to try and launch it here at turn 4, otherwise he's going to get held up for the rest of the lap. Not close enough though.
And how good has Paul Young done in that beat-up car to hold off those guys? I mean, Roy Clark did get around him, but it took almost all that time to do it. And I'm not so sure Martin's going to be able to get it done. This lap is running out.
Yeah, exactly right. There's not much time left for those guys. They've got pretty much, a lap and a bit left. Right on cue as well. Nathan Moore has had to come into the pits. Now remember at the start of the race we said, keep an eye out for penalties and potential drive-throughs. Have a look at what we've got right here. This is the drive-through penalty on the last lap of the race for Nathan Moore.
Wow, that was super costly.
And the guys have to be careful to not get that penalty on the last lap because it will add time to their race. So if they do get a penalty right at the end, they will end up with a time penalty. But no issues for Corey Shepard. He's going to cross the line and pick up the win. Round 8 here at Red Bull Ring. What a win and what a dominant performance from Corey Shepard. Just ahead of him, this is the battle for the last drivers on the lead lap. Kararuski and Robbie Bradbury still going at it as Rudd and Kuznetsov across the line. And Martin and Young still going at it too. Ladder 4th, Brian Borg 5th.
Yeah, because Netsov gave it all he had, just wasn't able to reel him in enough in the time that he had left. And he'll finish back behind Dylan Rudd in that 3rd position.
Look like Martin's going to be able to get this move done. We have to wait for everyone across the line to just confirm that nobody else has got any penalties. Is that how the off-tracks work here? Someone may be right on the limit. Get one out of that final corner. Careful to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Woo!
There we go, Steve Martin in the pits. Paul Young in the pits. He's got the drive-through right on the last lap. He's not going to be able to serve it, which means that he will get a time penalty.
I imagine that time penalty has got to be worse than serving the penalty.
Yeah. I think from memory it's around about 40 seconds. But Bradbury is going to hold on from Gary Husky. What a race that was though. Corey Shepherd dominant, but battles the whole way through the field. That was a fantastic race.
It was, and hey, although Corey Shepherd was dominant, that was probably the least amount of gap that he's had in several races back to second place. So congratulations to Dylan Rudd and Kuznetsov, Ladder, everybody for being able to really have such a good pace here and keep Corey Shepherd, within 10 seconds.
And confirming there is a time penalty added for Paul Young as well. So results are now through as official. Shepherd, Rudd, Kuznetsov the podium. Kenneth Ladder, Brian Borg rounding out the top 5. Kyle Stokes in 6th. He did get ahead of Sean McNamara after the pit stops in 7th. Hayden Harrison was able to get away from Tyson Mcavoy for 8th and 9th. Jared Bailey finished in 10th. And we roll over the page. Tony Klusterman, Nathan Moore, of course, who had to serve a drive-through. Roy Clark, Steve Martin. Their battle was pretty good to watch with Robbie Bradbury, Mira Haratsky, and then you can see take off 40 seconds, and that puts Paul Young just in 15th position, but he ends up 17th with that penalty. Fortunate for him. Vincent Skilbeck, Rob Crisdale, James Chastanoff, they all finished the race but 1 lap down, as did Andrew Ritchie. 5 laps down, but the rest of the drivers did not finish. Pixier, Savoy, Hugh, Barnett, fortunately all did not finish the race.
Yeah, that was a tough one. A lot of good drivers really had a difficult race here tonight. They'll be probably looking forward to Imola. Imola is probably a little easier track than what this Red Bull Ring was, but it's like it's fast and it's fun. I think they're really going to look forward to next week. 100%.
It's always a track that is drivers' favorite at Imola, so I'm looking forward to it as well. Of course, as we said, it's endurance season as well, so we're going to see lots of big names coming out to have a race next week as well. It's going to be very, very fun. It's been good fun to jump in and help you out tonight, Kane, as well.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. I hope everything is going well with JD and his night off. And boy, JD, Jay, I appreciate you coming in and helping me out. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us here for this first time the VA Supercars America Series has ever been here at the Red Bull Ring, and it certainly didn't disappoint. We hope to see you guys back next week for Imola, and until then, thanks for watching SimSpeed. I'm Kane Kraft. With me, Jay Kennedy. We'll see you next week.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he got rid of the outside, both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Section's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?